What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another review. Today we are taking a quick look at the live-action remake of the 2010 animated classic DreamWorks film, How to Train Your Dragon. This is the live-action version, but I say live-action in quotations because it's only somewhat live-action. The humans are real, a lot of the sets and environments this time around are also real, but they didn't use real dragons. DreamWorks, you guys are a bunch of cheapskates. Just like the 2010 original, it is directed by Dean Dubois. John Powell returns to score the film, and we do have a couple of returning actors, or maybe just one. I'm trying to think if there are others. Now look, if you've followed my channel for a while, you probably already know that I'm a tough sell when it comes to live-action remakes of animated classics. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone more critical, more difficult to please than me when it comes to these types of films. With that in mind, this movie was a pleasant surprise to me. Now, if your only set of criteria as to whether or not you're going to enjoy the remake of How to Train Your Dragon is how faithfully it adapts the original to the live-action version, I think you're going to find this to be a 10 out of 10. I mean, it is pretty damn faithful when it comes to a one-to-one representation that includes almost every single scene from that original, and a good chunk of the dialogue carries over as well. Obviously, there are some lines that are changed up, and that's where we tend to run into a catch-22 situation when it comes to reviewing films like this, because on one hand, we can be blinded by nostalgia and praise something that perhaps isn't as deserving of that praise, and we can also be extra critical of something because we hold that original to such high standards. I think that original How to Train Your Dragon is a genuine 10 out of 10. It is one of DreamWorks' best, if not their best film ever. So if this version is a one-to-one replica of that film, does that mean this one is also a 10 out of 10? As you may have guessed, the real answer is a bit more nuanced than that. Even though a lot of the material is the same that's being carried over between these two versions, a lot of it comes down to the execution, and that's what we're going to talk about for the next couple of minutes. Just like in the OG story, we follow misfit Viking teenager Hiccup as he forms an unlikely bond with the very creatures his people have declared war against. Admittedly, a big portion of whether or not this is going to work depends on how well our lead actor, Mason Thames, can embody Hiccup. And I'll say, first of all, that he's not Jay Baruchel. I think that voice performance in the original is so integral to what makes the film excellent. Mason Thames is great. I mean, he does probably as good of a job as he could to fill those shoes. That doesn't make his performance perfect, though. I still feel like there was a little bit more expression in the animated form, and I feel like we find that's the case with a lot of these remakes. Live action just doesn't have the same pop, the same world-bending abilities that animation can give us. It feels like a whole different sandbox to work in. With that in mind, I think Mason Thames was a little dry in the first third or so, but his performance actually started to grow on me quite a bit as the film went along. Toothless is great. A lot of the dragons are great. In fact, they keep the designs pretty consistent and largely make them feel, well, larger than life. The CGI is good, I have to say. Gerard Butler is the one big name that I can think of who returns to play the same character that he played in the original. And man, watching him play Stoic again, it feels like you're watching the original movie, not only because his character looks a lot like he does as an actor with the same costume on, but also because he clearly has the same amount of passion that he had back when he delivered those original lines. It all returns here. So when it comes to most of the main characters, the people that truly count, I think the casting is pretty good. We do run into some issues when we come to some of the other supporting characters, particularly Astrid, who is here played by Nico Parker, and I don't think she's bad. I just found her to be a bit dry. And I get that part of her character is that she's stuck up and a little bit of a know-it-all. But if you go back and watch the original, America Ferrera had a bit more expression in her voice when she delivered a lot of these big lines that people are, I'm sure, very excited to hear repeated and recycled in this remake. As much as Hiccup works, as much as the dragons work, and those two things work very well when they're on screen together, the romance between Hiccup and Astrid feels a lot more stilted and sudden in this version. A lot of the jokes don't land as well, number one, because I've already heard them once when I watched the original version, but also because it weirdly felt like a lot of the actors were rushing their lines. To quote Whiplash, were you rushing or were you dragging? In this case, the movie felt like it was rushing. In fact, I caught multiple instances in which characters cut each other off, and I knew what the rest of their lines were because I've heard them dozens of times before because I love that original. But if I was watching it for the first time, I probably wouldn't have caught the punchline to some of these jokes. I have to give this movie credit, though. The flight sequences are breathtaking. I mean, in terms of the value of copying and pasting this story from animation to live action, the flight sequences easily provide the most of that value that you can possibly obtain from basically milking the cow that is this IP. A lot of the big emotional moments from the original are well translated, and you have John Powell's beautiful soundtrack swelling in the background, and it might feel a bit shallow to praise this movie for basically just doing what the original did and doing it just as well, but I think in a world in which a lot of live action remakes are terrible, that's worth pointing out. So yeah, in the end, this is How to Train Your Dragon, the live action version. It is almost directly and completely a one-to-one translation with a few minor changes here and there, and it is about 20 or 30 minutes longer than the original. I almost had a difficult time identifying what scenes were added or extended. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at the end of the day, if you haven't seen the original version, I think that is still easily the superior option because you get the same story compressed into a 90-minute runtime, and I think it's executed better. This is the lesser version, but I can't believe I'm saying this. This is one of the first live-action remakes in years that I can tell you from my perspective is worth your time and worth your money if you want to go check it out in theaters. So I'm going to give the How to Train Your Dragon remake 3.5 stars. God damn it, this movie exploited my love for that original, but it recaptured some of the magic in a way that I think was effective. So whatever, those are my thoughts on the film. Be sure to let me know what you think of it. If you do manage to catch it in theaters, down in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.